What's going on, guys? Rybot, my teacher in the house, and I'm here with my GPL week number 6 Teambuilder. Your Royal Bomber for Bombies are taking on the Swansea Surge Surfers and my good friend, Coach Denistrio. Denistrio is the commissioner of the league. He's also my co-host for the power ranking videos. Super dope guy. We have a lot of fun trolling each other in the chat, of course. Mad respect for the guy. I'm going to have a lot of fun playing against him. My team matchup I feel pretty okay with. I'm pretty comfortable with what I have. But he does have some big problems on his team and some things that are not very easy for me to beat. So it is going to be a question of who manages their game plan better. So let's talk about his team first. He's got that Mega Beedrill, of course. Super fast mon at base 145 speed. Hits incredibly hard with that adaptability. Typically you see it run with U-turn Poison Jab to make use of its adaptability. Drill Run is a super solid coverage move, and he occasionally runs one other move. Could be Defog, could be Toxic Spikes, could be something like Fell Stinger, maybe Agility. I do have its typical Mega counter in Mega Aerodactyl, of course, and I do have Infernape, which does hit it incredibly hard as well. So I do think it certainly comes, but it is kind of threatened out by quite a bit of my team. So he will have to watch out how he uses this thing. Next up is Tapu Fini, bulky water fairy type, misty terrain preventing status for a few turns. Typically you see it run with a defogger, it has access to Scald, Nature's Madness, can get Taunt. Does suffer a little bit against grass and electric types. I have Celebi Galvantula, I have quite a few grass coverage options on my team, as well as some electric coverage options. So I do think Tapu Fini has to come. I think it's too good not to bring it. And it is a core component of his primary strategy, which is to get his Beedrill to sweep. I would say it's a risky bring, in my own opinion. I think he runs a physically bulky set to handle some of my physical threats, but I can somewhat contain it with Cresselia, so we will see how that goes. Next up is his current kill leader, O. 10 kills at the moment, 2 4-0 sweeps in a row from this thing. Super powerful with Dragon Dance, of course, mostly known for his physical presence. Can be a good special presence, but I do have things like Mudsdale, Cresselia. Registeel can take it on relatively well if he's not running fighting type moves. Cresselia can also handle it. Florges can handle it if it's specially offensive. I can definitely see a world where Como doesn't come this week, but I wouldn't be too surprised if he did bring it, because he definitely loves setting up with that thing. It is a really cool mon. I could definitely see him potentially running a Roselli Berry on it this week, because of my fairy coverage options, especially with things like Celebi, Cresselia, Florges. A couple of other mons might also get fairy moves as well. So he might think I might bring some kind of fairy answer to that Como, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Roselli Berry. But yeah. Next up is one of his Z captains, Silvally. Nightmare to prep for this thing. It can be any type thanks to its ability RKS system. Known for his Z parting shot mostly. It is one of his Z captains, so I do expect him to see it. Z parting shot, defog, and a couple of other moves. If I'm him, I bring Silvally Dark or Silvally Ground, because he has no Dark or Ground type on his team otherwise. So definitely something to consider. It is hard to prep for it because you never quite know until he sends it out in the battle. If he brings it, I won't really know what it is, and I won't really have a perfect answer for it. Next up is his Metagross, one of his new pickups this week. Really decent physical attacker, really solid physical bulk. Does also have things like Stab Priority and Bullet Punch, which does hit incredibly hard. It is slow though, it is weak on that special side. It can be punished. But without being able to drop its stats because of Clear Body, it may be a bit tricky to deal with. It doesn't really have an easy way to break through Mudsdale, so Mudsdale may be his stumbling block. Potentially even things like Registeel can take it on. But I don't have the best ways to break it down either, in a way. Unless I run some rather unusual sets that you may not expect me to bring. Next up is his other new mon this week is Shaman. Shaman pretty versatile, 100 stats across the board. Really tricky to break down because of its natural cure and aromatherapy, meaning that I can't just toxic stall it or wear it down. Does get that signature move in Seed Flare, which has a significant chance to drop special defense. That could also be a problem. And yeah, really good mon. I do have Infernape, which can hit it pretty hard. I do have a couple of other fire type coverage options on my team. Do need to watch out for that earth power if I use Infernape though, so that is something to bear in mind. Next up, I'm not convinced he brings it, but Volcanion is actually kind of scary for my team. We're monstrous special attack stat and a huge wide coverage move pool. And particularly looking at that signature move Steam Eruption. Does break down a lot of walls, really good wall breaker. Does struggle a little bit on the speed side though, so he may be forced to run Scarf, which isn't that great. Hydreigon is a solid matchup into it. I do have things that can kind of beat down the Volcanion, but it's not super easy. Particularly if he runs like a spec set. That could really cause me some problems. Next up is X-Plow. Pretty mediocre, I don't think it comes. Typical normal special wall breaker. Gets Scrappy Boom Burst with Choice Specs. That's pretty much all it does. Doesn't really do much else. Got a really lackluster speed stat, so I don't ever see it coming. It can't really break through my team very well. And if you run a Scarf on it, it has very little damage output in general. So I don't think it comes, but there is a chance he might choose to bring it to try and hit some of my physical walls a little bit harder. Breloom is next. Somewhat interesting type. Maybe a little cast by the wayside since he's picked up Shaman. But nonetheless, gets Sub, Seed, gets Spore, of course, gets Focus Punch, which can be pretty annoying. But he may have a hard time running it because Tapu Fini actually prevents status, so he won't be able to Spore me either. Also, pretty susceptible to fire and flying type moves. I do have both in abundance on my team. With particular some of my offensive threats like my Infernape. Aero can run things like Aerial Ace, which is Tough Claws boosted, so that's kind of scary. I don't think Breloom comes this week, but I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to bring it. Next up, Alolan Whack. Relatively good wall breaker. Pretty offensive typing, of course, being Fire Ghost. Good physical defensive stat. Typically, you need it to run Thick Club to get that attack stat to be at a high level. Things like Rockhead Flare Blitz is what it's pretty much known for. Can punch holes in a lot of teams. Lightning Rod is another option for an ability for him to give him electric immunity. There is no ground type on Dinny's team, so having an electric immunity isn't too bad. I don't think Whack comes though. I think I have too many answers for it. Things like Hydreigon, Infernape, even Tentacruel can take it on relatively okay. I don't think he can afford to bring Whack. I don't think Whack is good enough to be able to bring against me. If he does bring it, it's likely to be a rock lead, like an entry hazard lead set. I don't think he really can afford to run it. Last up, Lycanroc Midnight. Pretty mediocre Pokemon in my opinion. Definitely the weakest of the Lycanroc forms. Okay, hey, attack stat, okay, speed stat. Does of course have No Guard, which is pretty nice for Stone Edge. But it can't lay a finger on Mudsdale or Registeel. Gets hit back harder, which with moves it can't even miss. Don't really see any world where Lycanroc can afford to come. I don't think it beats anywhere near enough of my team. As for hazards and removal, he's got 4 Stealth Rockers in the form of Lycanroc, Alolan Whack, Metagross, and Kommo-o. He has no Spike Setters. He has 1 T-Spike user in Mega Beedrill. He has no Webs. He has 4 Defoggers in the form of Beedrill, Finny, Silvally, Volcanion. No Spinners, and he has 1 Cleric in the form of Shaman and Aromatherapy. So, looking at my team, let's see what I've bought. You can probably guess the first model on my screen as always, because I love this Pokemon far too much apparently. Wukong Infernape is back, running a Punchy Boy again. I like this set quite a lot. I've not really been able to use this set that much this season, because when I've brought it, it's not even come out and seen the field. But Fire Punch ruins the Beedrill. It does potentially also ruin the Metagross and the Shaman. Can hit pretty hard against quite a few of his team. Thunder Punch hits Finny pretty well. Can also hit the Volcanion really solidly. Mark Punch is there for revenge killing, of course, and U-Turn for pivoting out. Pretty standard, nothing too complicated about this set. Finny is his most likely answer to this thing, so I can easily just Thunder Punch it. And unless he's fully physically defensive, I can potentially two-shot this thing. So, does hit really hard. Iron Fist gives me additional firepower on the punching moves, which really does give me a little bit of an edge over Blaze. Blaze is a nice ability if I'm running Flare Blitz, but I'm not. So, yeah, I really like Infernape. Hopefully Infernape can do some work this week. Next up is going to be Pteranodon, the Mega Aerodactyl. This was a risky bring this week, but I need it for Beedrill. That's pretty much its primary job this week. Earthquake ruins quite a lot of his team. Stone Edge hits the Beedrill especially hard. Thunderfang is mostly there for Finny, but it can also hit the Volcanion as well. And also depends on what Silvally type he brings. Pursuit's there to trap him. If I do catch the Beedrill unawares and I can actually force it to switch out, I can Pursuit it and potentially pick it off, which would be really nice. Pursuit does also hit the Metagross pretty well. So this thing's job is to break some of his team down, slightly wearing down a little bit. It's not going to be too easy for Aero, but I think this is okay. Again, I do think Finny is one of his best answers to this, so Thunderfang is there to hit it a little bit harder. Next up, if I feel like the Finny's physically bulky, we are bringing back Aragog the Galvantula this week. I really like this mod. We're running Scarf this week. I should have run Scarf last week and I didn't. This set is pretty good. It outspeeds pretty much everything on his team, barring any Scarfers himself. Volt Switch for pivoting, of course, for momentum. Discharge, hopefully, to get some para spreads. Para would be very nice, especially if it's outside of terrain. Giga Drain is pretty nice coverage, especially on the Finny. Bug Buzz hits the Metagross for neutral damage, which is nice. Bug Buzz can also potentially catch the Shaman. So, pretty strong. This thing can break relatively well this week. Really solid pivot. It's quite frail, though, so I do need to be careful about switching it in. But yeah, I really like Galvantula in this matchup. I think Galvantula offers me quite a fair bit. Next up on the team, making a return after a break last week, is going to be Ginger the Mudsdale, running a rather unusual set this week. Fully physically defensive Impish as always, and Rocky Helmet. This is basically my main switch into that comma O. Earthquake ruins Beedrill. Toxic can hit a lot of his team outside of Misty Terrain. Rock Slide, excuse me. Rock Slide's there mostly for his fire type coverage if he brings it. It can also hit the Beedrill relatively well. Roar is mostly there for combo O in case he tries to set up on me. Pretty solid option. If I can get Rocks Up, which is on another mod this week, instead of this, I can definitely put in a little bit of work with Mudsdale. If I can get it fully set up, it's going to be kind of annoying to deal with. Next up is going to be making its debut this week, is going to be Iron Man Registeel. We're bringing it for the first time and we're bringing some heat to go with it. Red card Registeel with the clear body for no stat drops, of course. Stealth Rock, Protect, Seismic Toss, and Counter. Counter is there in case he tries to set up on comma O. I can potentially have a +2 close combat because I am fully physically defensive. And one-shot it back with Counter. Do need to be careful about it setting sub up, but Seismic Toss breaks every sub even if he's max HP. So, can be a potential. He'll lead this week if I feel like I need Rocks Up. I do think his most likely lead is that Beedrill. Potentially even the Shaman. Or the Silvally. But yeah, Registeel I think has a good chance to be useful this match. But we will see. I've not brought it all season, so I don't think he's going to expect me to bring it again. But I do like Registeel. It can sponge for a few hits from quite a few of his mons. So let's see what we can do with it. And last but by no means least, is becoming a rather fan favourite of mine at the moment, is Moonduck the Cresselia. Running Calm Mind again this week. This time we are actually running Shadow Ball. Last time I didn't when I needed it. Calm Mind is pretty solid setup sweep against this team. Energy Ball ruins the Finny. Can potentially ruin Silvally if it's Silvally Water. Also ruins Volcanion. Psychic there hits quite a lot of his team. Hits the Beedrill, hits the comma O. And can potentially also do work on the Breloom. And Shadow Ball is mostly there for Metagross because Metagross is actually kind of annoying for me to deal with. Obviously it does get blocked by Bulletproof from comma O, but that's fine. I can deal with that because Psychic actually does a number on it. I could have run Moonblast on it, but the issue with Moonblast is if he runs Roselli Berry on comma O, it doesn't really do excuse me, all that much damage. Plus, Moonblast doesn't really lay a finger on things like the Volcanion or the Metagross or the Tapu Fini, so it's just not worth running Moonblast. But yeah, I feel like this is my win con this week. If I can get some Calm Mind set up on this thing with enough health on it, I can potentially wreck his whole team. Now, this can, of course, be ruined by Z Parting Shot, which is something to bear in mind. I do think he potentially brings Z Parting Shot this week, as Breloom and Lycanroc are his other Z users, and I don't see him bringing either. But yeah, notable absentees this week. I really wanted to put Hydreigon on this team. Hydreigon does offer quite a lot of offensive pressure, particularly if it's Scarfed. I can outspeed the Beedrill and one-shot with Flamethrower. Earth Power also does in quite a bit of work against the Volcanion and the Metagross. But the issue I had was Tapu Fini and comma O. I feel like he brings those two, but some of the mons that Hydreigon's really good against, I don't see him necessarily bringing. I could of course be wrong. I could regret not bringing Hydreigon this week, but we will have to see. Another option really was Celebi, but Celebi being really bad against Beedrill kind of put me off. Also doesn't really do a lot to Shaman, so that's something else to bear in mind. Metagross can also come in relatively well unless I'm running like some kind of sub-seed set. Also Volcanion just murders Celebi. So it was a tough decision this week on this team. Ultimately, this is a team I've settled on. It's a lot more bulk and less power than I would like, but that's perfectly okay. Sometimes you just need to outstore your opponent. So yeah, that's going to be my team for this week. Let's have fun with the battle, of course. Hopefully we can bounce back from our unfortunate loss last week. But yeah, I'm going to get on out of here. My name is Rabonmi Teacher. I'm your coach of the Royal Bournemouth Rabonmis. Stay safe, stay awesome, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.